So in this section, we're going to be looking at how to write equations in y equals mx plus b, so slope-intercept form. So it's always going to be y equals mx plus b, and the m is going to stand for our slope, so our y over our x, or a rise over a run. So you have to identify the slope, and then you have to identify the y-intercept, which is always going to be written as 0, comma, a number. So if we look at our notes, we have three possible ways that we can write linear equations. So if it's given, slope and y-intercept. If it's in a graph, you must first identify the y-intercept, then find the slope. And then if it's 2 points that the line passes through, you want to find the slope using y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1, and then identify the y-intercept. So we're going to first look at the slope and y-intercept if that was given. So we have here, write an equation of the line with the slope of 3 and a y-intercept of 2. So we always want to write m equals 3, and our b value is our y-intercept, which is 0, negative 2. So they want us to write it into y equals mx plus b. So we have y equals, we're going to put the 3 in for m, x, and then we're going to put minus 2 because that's our y-intercept. So that would be our final answer. Now, if we had this one, which is write an equation of the line with a slope of negative 1/4 and a y-intercept of 5, what you would do is your slope is negative 1/4, your y-intercept is 0, comma 5, so you'd want to write it as y equals negative 1/4 x plus 5. That would be your final equation. Now in this case, we have graphs. So it says write an equation of the lines shown. So we first want to identify where our y-intercept is. So that's always our first step, is to find out where our y-intercept is. Well, we know a y-intercept, it crosses the y-axis. So I can see that right here, this point is where it crosses the y-axis. So I'm going to write it as 0, comma, negative 1 because it's down 1. And it doesn't move to the left or right, so it doesn't have an x value. Then what we want to do is we want to find our slope. So you can either find it from this point and move on, or keep kind of finding it from, you can go from this point to this point, it doesn't matter. So I'm going to try from here. So I go up 1, 2, 3, 4, so it's a positive 4. And then I go to the right 2, 1, 2. So I get my slope is 4 over 2, which is going to end up being 2. I could have found that out here. So if I went up 1, 2, and over 1, it would have been 2 over 1. So they want me to write my equation in y equals mx plus b. So I'm going to write it as y equals, my slope is 2, bring that x over, and my y-intercept is negative 1. So that would be my final answer. So we're going to look at example 4. So we notice that the line is facing in negative direction, so we're going to have a negative slope, but before we do that, we want to find out where our y-intercept is. Now in this case, it has our y-intercept, so our y-intercept is going to be 0, comma 1, so we always want to find our y-intercept, and then we want to find our slope. So in this case, I'm going to go from this point to this point. It doesn't matter which point, you could go from here to here, it doesn't matter, but I'm going to try here, so I'm going to go down 1, 2, 3, 4, so I'm going down a negative 4, and to the right 1. So my slope is going to be negative 4 over 1, or you can simplify that as negative 4. So that's my slope. I want to write it in y equals mx plus b, so I have y equals negative 4x plus 1. That would be my final answer. Now for my last one, it says write an equation of a line that passes through the point 1, 4 and 0, 2. Well, if you notice, this one is your y-intercept, so you do have your y-intercept already. So if you notice, 0, 2 is always a y-intercept. So we have our b value, but to find our m value, if you are given 2 points, you want to use y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. Okay, so if I have my points, I have 1, 4 and 0, 2. I'm going to label these. So I have x1, y1, x2, y2. So I'm going to take my points. So I have 2 minus 4 over 0 minus 1. So 2 minus 4 is going to give me a negative 2. A 0 minus 1 is going to give me a negative 1. So negative 2 divided by negative 1 is going to give me a positive 2. So that's my m value. So I have my equation y equals 2x plus 2 because I used my y-intercept. So I have my slope and my y-intercept. So that's my final answer. Okay, I'll do it one more example. So I have write an equation of the line that passes through the points 0, negative 1, and 3, negative 5. Well, if you notice, this is your y-intercept. So you have b equals 0, negative 1. So that is my y-intercept. Now I got to find my slope. So I'm going to label my points 0, negative 1, and 3, negative 5. I have my x1, my y1, my x2, my y2. So I'm going to take negative 5, subtract it from a negative 1, over 3 minus 0. Negative 5, this is going to turn into a plus. So this is negative 4 over 3 minus 0, which is just going to give me 3. So my slope is negative 4/3. I'm going to write my answer. So I have y equals, I want to put my slope, negative 4/3 x minus 1. And that would be my final answer.